Keith Gall is a disabled Calgary man who's confined to his wheelchair by the degenerative nerve disease multiple sclerosis. He recently had his house inspected by what's called a green team. That's where the city of Calgary and Alberta Health Services and the police come in and perform an inspection. As a result of that inspection, he was ordered to perform over $30,000 worth of work by Alberta Health Services. I sat down with Keith to talk with him about his experience.
My name is Keith and I'm 61 years old. I was the senior estimator for a big multifamily home builder until I got sick in 2004. I had to quit working.
Take me back to that time when you got sick. What was happening? How did you find out you were sick?
My leg went numb on the right side. Everything went numb from the crotch down on the right side, and then when I woke up one morning it was like that, and it took them 6 months to figure out what it was, or a little longer than that actually to figure out what it was, but then they said it was MS. They said because I was an older middle-aged man I would get it worse than most people, and that I would start off with secondary progressive instead of having the relapsing remitting. I started off with the worst kind of right off the start.
And so secondary progressive means that this MS is going to get progressively worse?
Yeah.
What's the prognosis? What's the end stage look like?
Most people get pretty much handicapped totally. My legs don't work at all now. Right. But my arms work good and stuff like that. My legs, my left leg I got a brace on, it doesn't work at all. I drag that everywhere, and then to get out of bed I got to kick it out of bed with the right leg. But I'm not doing bad at all now.
Right.
Holding my own anyway.
and so talk a little bit about your life before MS. What was it that you did? What did Keith's life look like?
I grew up in a little town in Saskatchewan where my dad had a construction company and a lumberyard back there too. And so I started off in construction right off the start, and back in Saskatchewan we did a lot of boating and fishing and stuff. Right. Here you got to fish in the river. Don't know how to fish in the river well. Fishing in a lake in Saskatchewan is a lot easier.
Yeah, the water's not moving. You can chase them down really easy, right?
Yeah.
So you've been living with this disease for 15 years.
Yeah. And
how have you managed the symptoms and that sort of thing? Like what does that look like? What's your treatment look like?
I get a lot of pain, a lot of spasms and stuff like that. That's one of my biggest problems. I take 3 different kinds of pills that are the highest dose you can take for pain and spasms, and it still doesn't work, so I use the medical marijuana to subsidize that to make it all come together and work.
Right.
Yeah.
So it helps you get that little extra edge that you need to get rid of the pain and live with this.
Yeah.
So you got your license, and about 2 years ago you started growing. Do your neighbors know that you do that?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I walked into the house, you can't smell anything. I mean, this is a normal kind of middle class bungalow that you find in any nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think people have this preconceived notion. I know I did, that you walk into a grow op, it's going to be moldy walls and it's going to be sketchy, and you're going to have your attack dog there. Yeah. You got your diabetic cat.
I got my attack cat there.
Not quite the same.
Yeah.
I think people would be surprised. It's important to note that inspectors found no evidence of any mold in Keith's house, but simply cited the fact that he had a grow op with humidity as a reason to suspect mold and a justification for invasive testing. I mean, by that standard, any house would have suspicion of mold that requires invasive testing. There's humidity in every washroom. And of course, once he rips everything apart and tests and spends $30,000, there's absolutely nothing stopping Alberta Health Services from suspecting mold once again and forcing him to do the same thing all over again. And this is a man who's on a fixed income of about $20,000 a year. This is a man who used contractors and tried to follow all the rules that the system required. Who did the work? I mean, obviously you're fairly incapacitated here.
I hired a contractor, a friend of mine who's a contractor and who has done this before, so he helped me do it. I paid him to do it, and he even went and put another chase on the roof, so I got extra chimneys going out the roof and stuff. Everything's vented out the roof and stuff, so putting new tops on and done properly, and put another chimney out that side. Then we had 2 vents downstairs and vented it all outside, and he went to a lot of trouble to seal it all up down there. And did a good job of it.
And he pulled permits and all that for the work?
Well, we didn't really do anything. There was an electrician pulled the permits to put in the wiring in the walls, and he put in the main circuits. And as far as construction, we really didn't do any construction. We just put poly up.
So it sounds like you basically have done your best to try to follow the rules and try to play the game they want you to play to be compliant with the law.
Well, it was hard to find out what the rules are. But being as in construction all my life, I do know that it has to be vented. I do know that you can't do any structural problems to a house, and I know what structural problems all amount to.
Right. How much time and money would you say you have wrapped up in trying to grow your own medicine?
Probably $20,000.
Right.
It was supposed to. My thought was it was going to last a long time. I was going to do this, right? And then they cut it off real quick, and it kind of threw a wrench into it,
And if you can't grow your own medicine, what is your options when it comes to getting the medicine you need?
Well, you can buy it from Health Canada, but it gets quite expensive from what I understand. I don't know the exact price, but I understand it's probably more like $280 an ounce, $300 an ounce instead of $60 to $100 that it cost me to grow it.
When did problems start? Talk about the story now of how you got into trouble and what it means and all that. To just talk right from, I guess, when you got that first phone call.
Well, I got a phone call from city building inspector, Dave Wood, said they wanted to come over and do a safety inspection. I said, not a problem. I didn't see any problems down there, so no problem coming over. And they came over on Monday, and they showed up with 6 guys.
6 guys?
Yeah.
Were you expecting that many people?
Well, no. He said he was coming over with a team of guys, but I never expected 6 guys. But he had 2 narcs with him. That the guy got the credentials for the one guy. He's well trained. he's good at it, but he's been doing it for a while. And the other guy never said a word. When he was here, they never went downstairs or nothing. They said they didn't care. It's a legal one. They didn't bother them.
Right.
They were just here, I think, to back those guys up in case I wanted to fight back. But
right.
I don't have much fight,
Wow.
We had a building inspector, a plumbing inspector, electrical inspector, and a health inspector. And I didn't know the difference. I didn't know why the health inspector is here. I thought it was a safety inspection, but I thought that's just how it went, right? If that's how they do it, that's how they do it. But I didn't know. Then I find out later that he wasn't supposed to be here unless he'd give me an order that he was coming in here too. They never mentioned health inspection.
Right.
So it kind of surprised me he was doing that, but they didn't really do anything. They came through the place. They gave me a paper to read and sign, and then they went downstairs, left the 2 cops standing up here with us. Daryl was here at the time, so we were just sitting at the table, and they stood at the doorway there. And the guys went downstairs, came back up. They said that they didn't see anything wrong, basically. It was looking good down there. The electrical inspector said there was a couple issues that he could tell me what to do with it. He said, I shouldn't tell you how to do it, but I'll tell you how to fix it so you can get your own homeowner's permit and do it yourself. And he was very nice about it. And the health inspector said it looked good to him too, but he said he would think you'd have to get a mold inspection just to be safe. And other than that, he thought it was good. And Daryl was listening to them in the kitchen or in the living room, and they said the same thing out there. The place looked fairly clean, and it looked good to them. And they left, and the health inspector phoned back a couple hours later and said that they had changed their mind. When he got back to the office, the boss told him to get it shut down, and they gave me some timelines to finish growing what I was growing, and said shut her down.
So they shut you down for suspicion of mold.
Yeah.
And why did they suspect mold?
They said because it's a grow up, and it's hot, and it's moist.
And so there's always going to be a suspicion of mold.
Yeah, but it is my experience of working with houses and stuff like that. There's mold in every house, basically. You go into a bathroom, you find mold around the tubs and stuff like that.
Sure.
In a lot of houses.
Well, tell me what do they want you to do? What does Alberta Health Services want you to do?
Well, they wanted at the end of the January, or 1st of January, everything had to be out of here. I think 29th or something of December, but everything had to be finished growing or stopped at that point. All the stuff had to be taken out. And then I had to get a mold guy in here to come and take everything out in the basement up to the bottom of the joist. Anything wood, anything carpet, anything drywall, anything has to go out. And they have to do it. Then they do a mold test. And then they wash down the concrete down there with just hot water. And I guess they have to put it back together, or I have to put it back together. Then they go upstairs and they got to take all the baseboards off, all the casings off, and look for mold behind them. cut holes in the wall all over the place and testing the walls for mold. Then go up in my attic and take all the insulation out of my attic and look for any structural damage and any mold up in my attic.
Keith, how much is this estimated to cost?
Well, I never really sat down as an estimator like I haven't figured it out, but from talking to other people, they said it's from $25,000 to $30,000 before it's all done.
$25,000 to $30,000
Yeah.
on suspicion of mold. And when you put everything back together again after you follow their orders,
Yeah.
is the suspicion of mold gone?
Yeah, I don't know what they're thinking after that.
Because it seems to me that they could just come back in the next day you start up and say suspicion of mold again.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
make you do $30,000 worth of work.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't think they're even like, from the feeling I got is they wouldn't be able to start up again.
Right.
You got to shut it down, clean it all up, and that's the end of it.
That's the end of it.
Yeah, it kind of felt that way. They've never really written that down, but I guess if I read it careful, maybe they did write that down.
So, I mean, this is, it strikes me as harassment, but what do you think the reason is for them shutting you down?
They just want to shut everybody down because they don't want anybody growing it. There's no real reason. They just don't want anybody growing it anymore.
Do you think their primary concern is your health?
Well, no, I think that their primary concern is that they can make tax dollars on the stuff that you buy from the government.
So they want to charge you more than your annual income
Yeah,
to fix this problem.
Yeah.
You've had the hearing,
Yeah.
right? And how did the hearing go? What was that all about?
I had to go up first and tell them what was going on. It seemed to be backwards to me. It was almost like I had to prove myself innocence, right? So anyway, I got up there and I gave them all my evidence and what from my side of it, all the evidence went up there. And then they did their stuff afterwards. And seemed to go pretty good, but they've never got back to me to tell me. That's been
so this was an Alberta Health Services tribunal, right?
Yeah.
So it was made up of 3 judges?
I think they were lawyers, just lawyers, but they were judges in the effect that they were up there as judges.
But they make a ruling so they can throw out this order if they find it unjust.
That's what they said, yeah.
What did the lawyer for the other side say at the end to the tribunal?
Well, he wasn't so much talking to the tribunal, he was talking to my lawyer, said, I'll take you to court, to Supreme Court. He said, if I lose this, I think he said Supreme Court, if I lose this thing, if I lose it, I'm going to take you to court. Maybe it was Magistrates Court or Supreme Court, I don't know what he said, but he was going to take us to court if he loses. He wasn't happy at all.
So he's basically saying, if we lose this, we're going to come after you even harder.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds to me like they just want to shut you down. They want to shut all these...
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care how good you got it or what you're doing, they just want you shut down.
Progressive Mayor Nanny wrote a letter back in December 2014 to then Health Minister Rona Ambrose, in which he expressed his concern over medical grow-ops. And I quote, "We hope our experience in Calgary can be helpful in your continuing efforts to discontinue the Medical Marijuana Access Regulations Program, the MMAR program." He goes on in the letter to explain why the MMAR program is creating a public health hazard by citing the fact that out of 33 homes their green teams inspected, 29 had safety codes violations and 26 were issued orders by AHS for violations under the Public Health Act. Now, Keith Gall's home would be considered another violation under the Public Health Act, and in a reinforcing feedback loop of circular reasoning, would be considered further evidence of a public health problem, even though there is zero evidence that there's any mold or any danger to Keith's personal safety, let alone the public safety. So it seems clear here that the political agenda is one of control, not concern over safety and health. I mean, consider the fact that Keith's own health has deteriorated as a result of the stress that these bureaucrats have put him under, to the point where he's been unable to get out of his own wheelchair and into bed due to the exacerbation of his MS from the stress. He's literally had to sleep in his own wheelchair multiple nights because of all the stress that the state is putting him under. We have a new Prime Minister, and he's talked about legalizing. I mean, that was a big part of his platform.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, they're going to start doing it like they say they want to sell them in liquor stores. They're going to have to start doing something like that, or have outlets directly for it, one or the other. But it's going to get expensive, and It's not going to be easy to get for somebody that needs it for health reasons. It's just not going to be affordable. And I don't think it's going to help the growing situation at all, making it legal. They're just going to make it harder to grow.
How do you think legalization should look in an ideal world? If you were King of Canada, how would it look?
Well, legalization, I mean, first off, you got to be able to smoke it within reason. It's kind of like drinking. You can't just drink everywhere. It would have to be within reason where you smoke it, I would think. And I mean, it's a weed that grows. You should be able to grow it yourself.
Right. It's not like you have to set up a elaborate moonshine still that's going to blow up in your basement or anything.
No.
It's you throw some seeds in some dirt and suddenly you're
plants growing. Yeah.
You're public enemy number one.
Yeah.
You've created a public nuisance, and I suspect there's mold here.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. They as soon as you do something like that, like you said, he's throwing some seeds into a plant and you're growing them. I got lots of people have all kinds of plants in their houses. People have big fish tanks. People have big plants all over the houses. They got to have the same issues.
Keith, what will it mean to you if they shut you down and you can't grow?
It's going to get to be a nuisance. I won't be able to afford to buy it, basically, so I'll have to go without it in a lot of cases.
And what will that mean, going without this medicine?
More spasms, more pain, but you got to do it. My friend who I'm growing with too, she's a chronic depression, and when she doesn't get it, she gets in really bad shape sometimes, and she's going to be without it too, because she won't be able to afford it.
Yeah. What are your intentions? Are you determined to fight this, or are you just going to kind of say, well, screw it, I'll
fight it if I can. I got no problem fighting with these guys if that's what they want, and I'll do it best I can. If I can raise some money and stuff like that, I'll do it that way. But you can go to get it up as far up in the court as they want to go. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah. What do you think your case might mean for other cannabis, medical marijuana users?
Well, it might make it so that it's easier for them to keep growing without having all these hassles. I mean, all they're doing is hassling me. They've made a point of telling my lawyer they're going to make it hard for me to get through this.
Do you think this is happening to other medical marijuana users?
Yeah, I know it is. Most of them are just folding up. I'm the only one that did an appeal with a lawyer.
Right.
They told us that you're the only ones coming back with a lawyer.
Sounds like reading Nenchi's letter that he mentions that 25 out of 33. Actually, 25 out of 30 grow ops, legal grow ops, were shut down essentially for mold remediation.
Yeah.
You would be number 26.
Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe there's been 25 more other people just like you.
Could have been easily enough.
But they, for whatever reason, they didn't fight it. Maybe they didn't have the money. I can bet.
Could be, yeah.
People are on disability. They probably don't have a lot of extra cash to throw around fighting a Leviathan state with all sorts of resources who are determined to keep dragging you back into court if they don't get their way.
But somebody had to tell them somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
I figured it had rattled their cage somehow.
That's
right. To get them going there. They just can't do it. They just can't step on everybody that easy. And I figured this would rattle their cage, and for the amount of money I spent so far, I can cash an RSP and do it.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of everyone else, thank you for what you're doing.
All right,
I appreciate it.
Now, it appears that liberals and progressive politicians like Nenchi, Wynne, and Trudeau are picking up where the Conservative government left off. Namely, they seem interested in centralizing control of cannabis production and distribution at the expense of the marginalized. Now, the Conservatives wanted to centralize control fascistically in the hands of a few corporations. And it appears that the left wants to centralize control in the hands of the state. It also seems clear that people with political connections like Justin Trudeau's Chief Financial Officer Chuck Rafisi will profit handsomely from the Canadian government's schemes to legalize under option 1 or 2. And what's also clear is that people on the margins, people like Keith Gall and thousands of other medical and recreational marijuana users, will continue having their health, life, and liberty threatened by the state.
But here are some things you can do if you're a medical marijuana grower under the MMAR program. Number 1, you can refuse entry into your home by these green teams and demand that they come back with a warrant. Put the onus on them. That's how our justice system is supposed to work. Number 2, you can alert the media, especially sympathetic media like Cannabis in Canada and the Western Standard. And also, you can alert noted activists about what's going on, and together they can apply political pressure and make politicians feel very uncomfortable about oppressing sick and marginalized people. Number 3, when they do issue orders against you, you can fight back like Keith is doing. Now clearly 26 other people in Calgary did not fight back, and they paid the price for that, becoming another statistic, having their life, health, and liberty diminished and destroyed by the state. Keith recently won a small victory in that the tribunal he appealed to found Alberta Health Services to have been unreasonable in their order. And they've given them until February to come up with a compromise. Now this is a small but an important victory. I mean, it's forced the state to have to reconsider the idea that they can just have their way with growers anytime they want. And Keith could have just closed up shop. He could have avoided the giant headache and expense of defending himself against the aggressions of the state here. But instead, he stood up to the bullies and has made a difference for other people in Canada. And from those of us who love liberty, thank you, Keith Gall. For the Western Standard and Cannabis in Canada, I'm Tim Moen.